Hi, you're in the garden with April. Welcome to the Chandler Community Education Garden at Veterans Oasis Park. And today we're going to talk about garden pests and critters. We like to do things naturally and not put chemicals in our garden, and if you're the same, here's a few tips I hope you can use. One of the best ways to prevent pests in the garden is to have a healthy garden, have healthy plants. If it's time to pull a plant out, go ahead and do so. A rotting plant attracts our pests. And also, if we have other things to detract them, such as planting garlic and onion around our plants, peppermint, they don't like that either. One thing you can do to start your garden off on the right foot is use some frass when you plant your seedlings. Frass, that's F-R-A-S-S. It's actually excrement of different bugs, such as the black soldier fly or mealworms. Their excrement is dried out and uses a powdery substance you place around the plant, and what that does is it triggers the immune response of your seedling, and it automatically starts trying to defend itself against pests. So whenever those aphids or those whiteflies show up, it's already got a strong defense going, and that's something to ask for in your garden center or at your nursery. Probably the biggest issue that people have in their garden is aphids. They can be green, they can even look black, they can look white. Well, aphids can be very destructive, and we have a lot of different things that we can do to help get rid of aphids or prevent aphids. One of the things with aphids that we want to do is try to get them off the leaves as soon as we recognize it. And I sometimes just smash them with my fingers. The other thing you can do is take a sprayer. You want a good one that's going to let you go upside down because you want to get the back of these leaves. And use some water and some soap. By soap, use something like a Castile soap. That's good for the garden as well and won't hurt your plants. In there you can also add some peppermint extract, or if you get the Castile soap that already has natural peppermint in it, that's a good thing. Some people prefer to add in a little garlic or cayenne. You want to spray early in the morning or in the evening so that anything that's left on the plant, such as residue, doesn't burn the plant in the heat of the day and in the sun. The soap acts two different ways. The soap can help dry out the aphids. The soap also helps bind it onto the leaves so that the water isn't just falling right off. When the aphids are eating your plant, they excrete this sweet mucus called honeydew. And ants eat the honeydew that the aphids are producing. So if you see little black ants going onto your tomatoes or other vegetables, do check under the leaves and look for the aphids. Ants will defend aphids to get that honeydew from them so they can harvest that. They actually call it farming. Another pest in the garden is your whiteflies, and you see those a lot whenever you bring something home from a big box store or whatever. They're coming out of the soil. It seems they're flying everywhere. One way to test for whiteflies is to put a yellow index card. They see yellow, they think it's a big giant flower garden. And put some petroleum jelly on it, place those cards at the base of your plants, and if you see a bunch of flying insects stuck to it, most likely those are your whiteflies. You can spray off the whiteflies, but of course they fly, so it isn't always the best way to get rid of them. Another thing that you can use is your neem oil and neem spray. Neem spray is a good all-around natural pest deterrent for especially your flying pests like your aphids and your whiteflies. Another way is with other beneficial insects. Get some lacewings or ladybugs from the nursery. You can order them online and they'll send ladybugs to you. Make sure you have enough food for those ladybugs. They usually come in 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 ladybugs, and if you only have a few aphids, that's not quite enough food for it, and they're just going to fly away. Another way to help eradicate some of your pests like insects or caterpillars, you can use diatomaceous earth. It's a powder and it's a natural substance that is mined, and I buy food grade so that if any's left on the leaves and I happen to eat it, it's totally fine. People actually use diatomaceous earth as a supplement, so it's not going to hurt you as a person. I got one of these, and it's great for spraying your powders everywhere you need to spray them. Diatomaceous earth is easy to use. You just place it into one of those puffers and you just puff it onto your plants. A whole kit at most nurseries or big box stores. They're little pellets, and once you get them wet, they get bigger, and then all you do is keep this moist in here and it will grow your plants great. It's like a little greenhouse. I have used these for some of my fall, winter vegetables, like getting all my lettuces and kales and broccolis. So if you want to use one of these, they do a great job. Also, if you want to get you some little pots like this, you can even buy some. I get these things pretty much free at the big box store. I see them sitting over off to the side when they're out in the nursery area, and I say, hey, what are you going to do with those? And can I have them? And I usually get them. So I just get some, and I have pots for doing my seeds and other little plants. Now, if you're going to do something, it's only going to be a couple of weeks or so, and they're going to get about this big before they go in the ground, something like this. But if you're going to hold them inside, and they're going to be really big, you might go ahead and just start them in something this size. So these are great for doing tomatoes and peppers and some of your larger plants, so they have a little bit more room and you won't have to transplant them indoors before transplanting them outdoors, and it will reduce some of their stress. These are really handy. So if you use one of these, they're pretty great because you can plant the entire container. They're compostable. The trick is we're a little drier here in the low desert than other places that use these. So I always cut them open, and that way the plant can really get out where it needs to be, or cut little holes and so roots can get out as they need to, because they don't compost as fast here in our desert as they do in other climates. So I don't use these as much, but they are great, especially for beginners. Now we want to talk a little bit about what we're going to plant. Look at the planting calendar. There's a ton of vegetables for your fall and winter garden that you can plant ahead of time. Into September, middle of October, so they're ready to go in the ground as soon as that heat wave is done for us. Flowers, you can go ahead and seed those inside and get those started, because it's nice to have your pollinators ready to go in your garden, attracting those butterflies and those bees so they pollinate all of the great veggies that you're planting. Now with your spring and your summer, you have things like squash and zucchini and peppers and tomatoes. These are all great to start inside. January, February, check the packaging. Sometimes we've had some frosts that go into late February or early March, so you may want to hold up taking your transplants out during that time, because you can still transplant them in April, and so even if you get a late start, that's fine. Now there are a few things that we don't want to try and seed inside because they're not successful transplants. Garden beans and sweet corn and melons, they get overly stressed in the transplant process, so those are things that we may not want to try to seed inside, and just wait till it gets warm enough to plant them in the ground directly. So once you have the seeds planted in your small pots, you'll want to keep that soil moist. Basically, if you stick your finger in about a quarter inch and you don't feel moisture down there, you want to go ahead and water it. You don't want it to be sopping wet, you want it to be moist, a nice cozy and humid environment down in the soil for them. And then if you have something like this tray, they start drying out too much, then just add some more water and it'll siphon up into there. Now, when you have your seeds all nice and ready to go, a lot of people think that you need to have a ton of sunlight on them so they'll germinate and get ready. But actually, most seeds need no sunlight whatsoever to germinate. They just need warmth. Where you keep your house thermostat is probably just fine for seeding your plants indoors. Some people actually get seed warming mats. I haven't found that necessary. We are pretty warm here as it is. However, if you wish to get one, that might be helpful if you have an area that's really cold in your house. Generally about 75 degrees, give or take 5 degrees, you should see some great germination. And then once they pop up out of there, that's when they're going to need the sun, so they're going to have some photosynthesis. So you want to get them into a windowsill or somewhere else in the house where they can get some sun until it gets a couple of inches. And if it's getting warm enough in the mornings, go ahead and start taking them outside for a few hours. Do that for a couple of days or a week, and then take it out for a little bit longer until it's going to be time to transplant, and then you'll want to have had it out for maybe 5 or 6 hours in a day, so it's gotten used to that direct sunlight, so when you transplant it, it won't go into shock and it's all successful for you. Well, I hope that gives you some great tips and tools for starting seeding inside, and we'll catch you next time. If you'd like more information about gardening or how you can volunteer here in our garden, contact the Environmental Education Center or check out Break Time for more details. Hi, you're in the garden with April. Welcome to the Chandler Community Education Garden at Veterans Oasis Park. And today we're talking about seed harvesting. It's an important time of year at the end of spring, beginning of summer, because a lot of your plants are probably going to seed if you're letting them. We want to start harvesting those seeds and getting ready for our fall. And there are a lot of questions I hear about how do I get the seeds, how do I store the seeds, if I have too many seeds. So hopefully we can answer a few of those questions or get you started on your journey with seed collecting. So a few of the things we want to talk about is where the seeds come from. They can come from various places on the plant, whether it be from pods or petals of flowers or from the pits like of peaches. And like many things in our garden, when you see it go to flower, as they call it, you can expect that there may be some seeds coming soon after. Today I actually picked some of my dill. As you can see, these aren't quite ready. There was flowers before and then they started to turn to seed. And now you can see these have a ton of seed. Whenever we get to the end of our winter garden or our spring or summer garden and things are going to seed, sometimes we have a habit of just ripping everything out. And we do want to do most of that to keep the pests at bay, because unhealthy plants will breed your pests. But if you have some great plants that you want to collect seeds from, keep those. Keep those better plants, one or two of each, so you can have some wonderful seeds to plant the next season. There's so many ways to get your seeds. With my dill, I actually use this colander. I actually buy these at the dollar store really cheap because I use them to cover plants. I use them for this kind of thing. So if I go like this, all my seeds are coming off in there. I have a bowl underneath to catch them. Or you can just, these are really, really ready. You can just kind of take them off with your fingers. Another way is to use paper bags. Sometimes, especially if it's the flower type like our dill, you can actually just shake the paper bag and have your seeds fall off into the bottom of it. And paper bags are great because they allow the seeds to breathe and dry out at the same time. I like using these little wine bags for your longer stalks that you need to put in there. A few other things that have seeds are your peppers and your tomatoes. And there's two ways you can do peppers or tomatoes. You can actually let the pepper or the tomato dry out, and you can kind of pick through and get the seeds off after they've dried on there. Or you can take a really ripe one, go ahead and open it up. I use a little metal strainer and get some of that goo off, and then place them on wax paper. Put them in a place where it's not going to get wind and your wax paper won't go flying. So there's different methods there. Now back to harvesting some of them. Last week here at the Chandler Education Garden, we were surprised to see a lot of pods on our asparagus plants, so we were real excited about that. So these were turning color. We picked the plant and picked the seeds, and we let them dry out so that we could easily crack them open. You want to make sure your seeds are ready before you harvest them off the plant. A few other things you can collect. This is actually Arizona milkweed, and they're in pods, and you see all the fluff in there. And of course that fluff is what helps carry them around the world so they can be deposited elsewhere. We have what's called a milkweed vine. They're starting to go to their pods. This was a really big pod, and it started to crack open a little bit, and just in a few days it finished drying out and cracking open, and look at all those fabulous seeds. We normally pick all of our radishes, but we missed a few and it went to seed, and I have never actually seen radish go to seed, so I was excited to see this, and we'll show you here what we have for radishes. Look at these. The radishes are kind of old. They were from our winter garden, and we have all these fabulous pods to get seeds from, so we can have more seeds for our garden again. Now, one of my favorite things to see in the springtime is all of the beautiful flowers on the side of the road, like the desert lupin. Another one of my favorites is the glow mallow, the orange flowers that you see in the springtime everywhere, and I wanted to harvest some of that as well. The flowers themselves contain the seeds on the inside. And when you break it open, all those seeds are there, and that's how they go along in the wind. As you can see, it's breezy today, so that's how they get everywhere. So I picked some of those so I can have some next season.